What? Oh, yeah. Welcome to Houston Food Bank for the kickoff of Hunger Action Month. September is recognized in that way every year now, which is a real shame because, why do we keep in a rich country? Why do we keep having hunger? One of the things that we've learned over the years is, of course, that hunger isn't actually about food. Hunger is about income. The family's not making enough money, even though the majority of the families who actually experience hunger, 2/3 of the food insecure households have an adult who work, and yet we still have hunger in America. This is not necessary. So we take this time to try and call attention and also provide people with action steps that they can take to help turn this around for a rich country. So we have a number of guests here to speak, two of our wonderful members of our congressional delegation. And let me start by introducing Congresswoman Sylvia Garcia. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. And first, let me, Brian, thank all the volunteers who are here to do the hard work that's necessary to get that box of food to people so that they can have food on the table. It is such important work. Please know that I've been there doing that, and when I walked in, I almost took my jacket off and thought, forget the press conference, I'm going to help out. Because it's important work. And for me, it's personal. I grew up poor in South Texas. I was part of the program that is the grandfather to the SNAP program and to the programs that we're talking about today. It was called the commodity program. Back in that day, what you got in a box was usually cheese, peanut butter, maybe some powdered milk, maybe some powdered eggs. And it was a welcome sight anytime it came to our household, because I still remember so many times opening the refrigerator and the only thing there was the water jar. So unless my brothers went hunting and killed a rabbit, we weren't going to eat anything that day. So that is still going on in this country so many years later, and it's shameful. And it's shameful that so many Americans are on the SNAP program. And there's 1.2 million veterans on the SNAP program, 94,000 veterans in Texas. And more importantly, there's about 35,000 active military families, people who have dedicated their lives to serve our country, who for whatever reason we're not paying them enough, that even though they do get a paycheck, they still have to get on food stamps. So isn't that a shame? A rich country as ours still going through that. So when we talk about the food programs, you may hear some people say, oh, well, they got to go to work. There should be a work requirement. Well, the military people are working. Most of the veterans have the veterans benefits because they're either disabled or they have some other issues, but it's a way to supplement their income. And most of the people on food stamps, quite frankly, almost half, are children. They're elderly. They're disabled. So please, when you hear some of this, and you're going to hear some of it, and this is a preview because we're debating the Farm Bill. The Farm Bill includes the funding for many of these programs. The food programs, the children's breakfast programs at school, those didn't exist when I was growing up. But trust me, if they had, I would have taken advantage of them. But we've got to take care of people. And as Brian said, it's not a question just it's a question of income. People are not making the wages that they should, so they've got to find another way to put food on their table for their families. So for us, it's about the Farm Bill, and this legislation has to be authorized every 5 years. It's up for authorization. And it is so important to so many Americans to make sure that they have food on the table. But it's also important to farmers. I grew up on a farm. Ours was little and kind of went bust, right? Which is what resulted in us having no money to put on the food on the table. But it's about supporting farmers in the work that they do. And especially with the drought that we're seeing in so many parts of the country, we have to be prepared to know that, farmers may be hurting if this Farm Bill doesn't get authorized, because they work to make sure that we grow the crops that go in those cans and the food that will be delivered. But if the drought continues to such a degree that there is no crops, then that's going to make the food even more scarce. So we've got to work hard to make sure that we double up and reauthorize the Farm Bill, and that we continue all of these programs that serve so many Americans. And lastly, let me just say this. As someone who grew up on a farm, I find it exciting that there's still farms in and around Houston. And that may surprise some of you, because so many of us kind of stay inside the loop, and we forget that there's life outside the loop. But joining us today is a farmer in my district, and I'm pleased to introduce him, Tommy Garcia Prats.
So we often joke that kids think food comes from the grocery store, but that's my experience as well. I grew up in Houston, and that's where my family got our food. Things changed as a native Houstonian when I worked on my first farm at the age of 24 years old, when I grew my first bit of food that I ate myself and that I fed to other people. Farming changed my life. Growing up in Southwest Houston, I never thought that I could take a piece of land that was nothing and turn it into something productive. But that's what my brothers Mark, Dan, and I did in 2014 when we started Small Places and our urban farm, Finca Tres Robles. And we're doing that again, moving our farm to a new 1.5 acre piece of land in the East End, just 10 minutes west of here, thanks in part to a 40-year land agreement with Harris County. And we know that the 30,000 pounds of fresh produce that we grow on our farm is only barely scratching the surface of the need that's just in our East End community. But something that we've learned over the last 9 years is that it's about more than just receiving a box of food. Our community is hungry for more inspiring places than a food pantry to get their food, for a more meaningful use of their time than waiting in line for a box of produce every couple weeks, for more dynamic relationships than something transactional, for being able to be active contributors to something bigger than themselves than just recipients of our community's goodwill. And we've experienced firsthand on our farm what happens when you give high quality food to the same households with consistency and build relationships over time through that consistency, that how we can impact and change. Just relieve a little piece of the economic, the time, and the food access burdens that so many people in our community have to deal with every day. And we're really proud of that. And as farmers, it's our thesis that what we do is essential for creating agency and change in community. And we're so grateful to the food bank, especially in this year when the Farm Bill is getting renewed and there's so much dialogue and discussion around it, that they're willing to come to us to listen, to learn about our needs, and use their voice and their energy to advocate for how the Farm Bill can support farms like us, as well as bring our product into programs where the food bank is distributing that into communities in need. So for Hunger Awareness Month, it's our chance to recommit to our why, to our mission as a farm, and to our neighbors and neighborhood. And thanks for letting me speak. I'd like to have Daniel Delicio from Soldier and Family Red from the Texas Military Department to come and speak.
Good morning. I'm employed with the Texas Military Department in direct support of the State Family Program. We provide guidance, resources, support, and training to units, service members, and their families to empower them to face challenges of service in the National Guard and state and national emergencies, and through all deployment phases. We provide these resources to support the governor and president with ready forces in support of state and federal requirements. So basically, we ensure soldiers and their families maintain a certain level of readiness. I am currently assigned to 9 units that make up about 750 soldiers. In the past fiscal year, starting from 1 October of 2022 through present, I have had 76 documented cases in which service members have requested assistance with obtaining food. These cases involved other circumstances in which financial assistance was requested. There have been an additional 21 referrals provided to service members who specifically asked me for information related to food banks and the requirements to use them. I have heard on more than one occasion from both soldiers and family members who have refrained from asking for assistance with food due to embarrassment. And now I'd like to call up Chase, the field representative for Congressman Morgan Luttrell. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you for having us here. The congressman wishes that he could be here today. He had a prior engagement, unfortunately. What the points he really wanted me to get across is that Congressman Morgan Luttrell works on our Homeland, our Veterans Affairs, and our Armed Services Committee. So these issues that were raised about not only veteran food insecurity, but the startling number that almost 25% of active duty military are facing food insecurity. The congressman is committed to continuing the fight against food insecurity for our active duty and our veteran communities. And with that, I would like to introduce Moya Press-Jackson with the Texas Grandparents Raising Grandchildren.
Good morning, everyone. It's an honor to be here. Our fearless leader, Mercedes Bristol, out of San Antonio, where Texas Grandparents Raising Grandkids is based, could not be here, so I'm happy to be here representing Texas GRG, texasgrg.com. So they are a nonprofit that advocates for the grandparents who are trying to keep their kids out of the CPS or Child Protective System. And that number is huge. I always say they're like the last invisible group, if you will. And of course, grandparents, seniors have their own struggles financially. And so they're not, who's going to turn away their own flesh and blood when they drop that kiddo off to you 3 o'clock in the morning because something has happened? And they are not obligated, if you will, to do that, but they are going to do that because that is their duty. So these people need help. And unfortunately, like our esteemed guest said, in this country, in the Texas, food insecurity. So some of the benefits of these grandparents keeping their kids, their grandkids, and now, ladies and gentlemen, their great-grandkids. Now we have 80-year-olds and up. Now have to take in their great-grandkids. So fixed income. Do I eat or do I pay my bills? And we know when you get older, you have medical issues. Do I eat or do I go to the doctor? Do I get my meds? So what about the kids? Do I eat or do I get their uniforms? These people have raised their children. And again, they're like that last invisible group that supports or undergirds all the other groups that have their seat at the table. But these people are silent. They're silent warriors. You know, those 70, 80s, they're not going to complain. But we need our churches and our schools to identify these people. When you see these people, you haven't seen them before, you see them now with a brood of kids behind them, like, wait a minute, I know you're way past your childbearing years. Who are these kids? So it is up to us to make these people visible. 25% of grandparents have food insecurity, 25%. Let that sink in, which is 60% higher than the average household. And again, these people are retired. They can't go back out and start a new career. So they are counting on us, churches and schools, to help them. In 2022, Texas was 1 out of 10 states of food insecurity for grandparents. And that's going to trickle down to the rest of the family. So how can we protect grandparents and grandkids? Support food delivery. We know we have Meals on Wheels and stuff like that, and that's fine. But there's an extra layer now because we have some little kids coming up. Also, we need more medical expense deductions to qualify for SNAP. Let's stop holding against them, they need that Social Security, so that should not be they should not be penalized for that. And lastly, support the double up bucks. That will lead to more money for produce for the grandparents. So again, look at your community. Don't let them be invisible anymore. It's up to you. Again, I'm Moya Jackson with Texas Grandparents Raising Grandkids. Thank you so much for this opportunity. I appreciate it.
No, I'm not going to. Our closing speaker, I believe, is Congressman Al Green, who's been a great supporter of this work for many, many years.
Thank you, Brian. Would you kindly give Brian a big expression of appreciation? And if I may, I'd like to also acknowledge, Brian, all of these many volunteers who are here today. When I came in, they were busily stuffing boxes and preparing food for distribution. This is a not-for-profit organization, and volunteerism means a lot to it. So would you kindly give a big hand to those volunteers who are here today, all of them. Thank you. And of course, my colleague who spoke so eloquently, I'm always honored to be in her company. She's an outstanding member of Congress, served in many other capacities as a public servant. She means a lot to Congress, and Congress means a lot to her. Would you give her a hand, please? And just this food bank was founded some 41 years ago on March the 8th of 1982. More than 41 years old, not-for-profit organization. It has been serving people consistently and continuously since that time. I believe that it has made the difference in lives of people that many of the persons who work here will never meet and greet. I believe that this food bank is a necessity for our area, and I believe that we owe a very special expression of appreciation to the people who have a hands-on experience with dealing with hunger in our area, the people at the Houston Food Bank. Would you give them a hand, please? Because unlike other banks, this bank makes deposits and you don't have to pay interest. Well, I'm going to talk a little bit about persons who are what we call senior citizens. And I'm eminently qualified to do this because last year I celebrated my 25th birthday for the third time. I'm eminently qualified because 76 years ago on this very day, I interrupted my mother's fishing trip. My mother was on her way to fish. She was a fisher person par excellence. On her way, and I decided that this would be my day to come to the planet Earth. So 76 years ago, Mother, I love you and thank you for taking time off to give birth to me. Would you give my mother a hand, please? Now, friends, the numbers speak for themselves, so let me run through them quickly. In 2021, 5.5 million seniors, that would be persons aged 60 and above, faced hunger. That's 1 in 14 seniors, or about 7.1% of all seniors. Food insecurity among seniors and among older adults remain higher than prior to the Great Recession. Latino seniors are 3 times as likely to experience food insecurity as Anglo seniors. Black seniors, 3.8 times likely to receive or be experiencing food insecurity as Anglo seniors. Food insecurity seniors and older adults consume lower quantities and qualities of key nutrients such as iron and protein and are more likely to have chronic health conditions. Food insecure older adults are 19% more likely to have high blood pressure, 57% more likely to have congestive heart failure, 65% more likely to be diabetic, and 66% more likely to have experienced a heart attack. This is why I'm proud to tell you that I have put in a request for $650,000 for the Houston Food Bank in my community project funding. And Brian, there are some who will say we ought not have these earmarks. Let me address this quickly. In 2022, we had about $9 billion scheduled for community project funding. Some people still call them earmarks. That was 5,000 projects. That was in a $1.7 trillion discretionary spending portion of our budget. That would be about 0.53% of the discretionary spending. In 2023, we had about $15.3 billion for our community project funding. This is a part of community project funding, this $650,000. Well, that $15.3 billion for 7,000 projects was 0.9% of the spending. This is money well spent. This is money that congressional representatives have the opportunity to target to certain things that are needed in their congressional districts. The Houston Food Bank needs this money not because it just wants to have money in a coffer, but because there are hungry people who must be fed. We need to continue this community project spending. I mention it because it is always at risk. And if it is at risk, hunger is at risk. We must have money to feed the hungry in the greatest and richest country in the world. That was an applause line. So I close with this, my dear friends. The greatness of America will not be measured by how we treat those who live in the sweets of life, those who have fine cars, live in the finest homes, have the best food. The greatness of America will be determined by how we treat people who live in the streets of life, by how we treat children in the dawn of life, and how we treat seniors in the twilight of life. I believe that in the richest country in the world, we can afford to feed seniors in the twilight of life. Thank you, Brian, for having me, and thank you all for being here. Okay, Eric Colbeck is here, I believe, and he is with Walla Assistance Restoration Ministries. Eric, you're up. Give him a hand.
A wise person once told me that if you don't ask, the answer is always no. Right. First, I want to thank the Houston Food Bank for their partnership and the support that we get from our liaison and from our community. When I was asked to speak at this press conference, my first thought was, okay, we're out in Waller. Do you really want us down there? I mean, it's, you know, we're a rural food pantry. We also provide other services as well. It just seemed like a stretch for us to come down here to do this. But in the immortal words of Isaiah, here I am, Lord, send me. So I came. Waller Assistance and Restoration Ministry, or WARM as we call it, is a nonprofit organization with the mission of expressing the love of Christ by serving those in need within our community. Our community is basically the northwest tip of Harris County and all of Waller County. We do this through programs such as our food pantry and other programs, financial assistance, voucher programs, and the like, and many more. But the food pantry is one of the largest programs that we have. Between the end of COVID benefits, such as the emergency allocations for SNAP, and higher than normal cost of living increases that our clients and neighbors are seeing, they are suffering more than ever right now, and they are in need more than ever. One recent example of this increased service request that we see is our back-to-school voucher program. We provide vouchers to Waller ISD for all the kids that are coming into school, and between last year and this year, we're seeing that increase in those vouchers of 4 times more students coming to us to get, whether it's clothes, shoes, things like that from our thrift store, right? And this program is going, and that's just so far, and this program is going to run till the end of September, so it's even going to get busier as we get into the school year. But since we're here to talk about Hunger Action Month, the Farm Bill, and food insecurity, let me switch gears. I don't want to bore you with a bunch of numbers, but I'm going to throw a couple out there of what we're seeing out there, right? Monthly pantry visits since COVID are up 51%. 51%. That's like half again as many people are coming to us for food. We sign up 5 to 10 new families for the pantry every week, right? So it's not just the people that have been coming to us the whole time, it is new people coming to us. Right, last year, we distributed over 176,000 pounds of food. Now, to the food bank, that seems like probably this much, very little, but for us, that's probably double what we've had to distribute in the past. With this, we continually struggle to keep our pantry stocked. All of this means that our neighbors need food, and they likely cannot afford it on their own. They are seeking our help, they're seeking your help. Rural communities play a critical part in putting food on tables across the country, yet they are more likely to face hunger. Higher rates of poverty in rural communities make it harder for people to afford food. One of the primary focuses of the Farm Bill is nutrition funding, which includes TFAP, SNAP, and senior programs, all of which are important to food security within our community. Our clients continually make difficult choices between costly food and basic needs. Hunger Action Month allows us to come together to help end food insecurities. So here I am asking, because if I don't ask, the answer is no, get involved with your local food pantry by volunteering. Give a couple hours a month, give a couple hours a week. We are always in need of regular volunteers. Donate. You can donate food, you can donate money. That'll all go to a good cause. Any of the local food pantries or the food bank will wisely use that money and that food. Hold a fundraiser and utilize social media and other contacts to spread the word to others. Make sure you get the word out about Hunger Action Month. And it's not just September that people go hungry, by the way. Educate yourself and make sure your voice is heard. You've heard from representatives up here what they are trying to do. Make sure that you're calling their offices. Make sure that they hear your voice. Make sure you're voting to get what you need as a constituent into these farm bills and other things. Contact your local representative's office. Make sure they understand what is important to you. Thank you again for your time and the opportunity to bring this attention to this need.
Well, I want to thank all of our speakers. It was a lot of great information. Hopefully this is going to take up all your news hours to show this. I want to thank, of course, the volunteers who are working here anyway. Special treat for you. Appreciate you doing this. And please take out the word. I mean, there's a lot of suffering that just doesn't need to be. We can do a lot better than this. Help spread that message. Thank you all very much.